Hey, how are we doing today? Welcome to Your Successful Retirement. Today we're going to talk about financial planning. It's one of those topics that I think if you asked 100 random strangers on the street and said, "What is financial planning?" and kind of condensed their answers a little bit because they're not, it's kind of an amorphous topic in the first place, you'd probably end up with like 16 to 18 different real answers that would be like on a bell curve. They kind of just dance around it. And that's to be expected. It's not well defined. And the scary thing is if you asked people in my industry, people that do finance for a living, that exact same question, you wouldn't get 16 to 18 answers. You get 12, same looking bell curve of some of them would kind of get close to it. And then there'd be some people that have no idea. And I've been doing this for 30 something years. I thought that by now we'd really have a good handle. I mean, if you say, what does a doctor do? Oh, we know what a doctor does. We can get a really, you can get specialization, but we kind of understand it. What does a lawyer do? We kind of understand it. What does like a general contractor do? We know what that person does. What does a financial planner do? And you get crickets. There's just nothing. People just kind of, sort of. So I want to demystify that and talk about when we bring a client through the financial planning process, what does that look like? What is involved and what's going on? And this is a topic that obviously is near and dear to my heart, but I've known what I wanted to do with my life since I was probably 16 years old. And that's frightening. I was a junior in high school and I knew a couple of things. And this was somewhat with the guidance counselors who weren't the greatest. And my dad, who was awesome. I knew certain things. I love numbers. I'm a nut for numbers. I love being my own boss. So people that love numbers, you could be an actuary. Well, that's okay, but you're not going to be your own boss. So that's not going to work. I love working with people. I love interacting with people. You're definitely not going to become an actuary. And I love dealing with money. I loved seeing money grow and finding all of the hidden tricks and twists of people's finances. So I'm sitting there after dinner having coffee with my dad because that's what we did. My kids look at me strange. I think I was drinking coffee at breakfast and dinner at 8, 9 years old, maybe younger. I was drinking tea with breakfast and dinner at probably 5 or 6, and caffeine doesn't affect me. People are like, what do you mean caffeine doesn't affect you? When you start drinking it at 8 years old, it doesn't affect you. But anyways, I'm 16 years older. So I'm telling my dad all these things and these ideas that the guidance counselors have given me. And he said, you should be a financial planner. Now, this is 1984, 85, somewhere in that range. There's no internet to go look this up. And I've got to find these things out. And I go back to school and do some research and this and that. This is it. This is exactly what I want to do. And I was just so excited and really focused on that to figure out what was going to happen. I had two choices and I discounted the second one very quickly. I knew this is what I wanted to do. And despite the guidance counselors, thank you, Mr. Palumbo, you were wrong, telling me that, oh, you shouldn't go to business school, you should go to liberal arts college because if you change your mind, I am not changing my mind. I'm that person that doesn't change their mind. I always have a 10-year plan in my head at all times because I'm like that. I'm a little neurotic like that. And I had a choice. One is to go to Bentley, now Bentley University, used to be Bentley College. And their focus, they started out as an accounting school back in the 50s, maybe earlier. And their specialty was the nuts and bolts of finance. And that was a big deal. So I could get the nuts and bolts. And they had a lot of stuff dealing with personal finance. That was a big deal. And that was very attractive. The other choice was Babson, which was down the street. And Babson, their focus was on, and probably still is, on entrepreneurship. And in hindsight, almost 40 years later, man, I would have loved to have learned a little bit from Babson and kept the stuff I learned from Bentley. And you can't do that. But so I wound up going there. And after graduating, I graduated in 1991 with one of the worst recessions we had seen since the early 80s. And nobody's hiring for anything. I sent out something like 88 or 92 resumes, and not sending out resumes like reading the paper, although I did read the paper, the Sunday Globe and the Saturday Globe and the Anything Globe every single week, the Boston Globe, looking for jobs. I probably went on a dozen interviews with insurance companies and didn't want to do that at all. They were awful. They were their idea of hiring me was, look, we want you to come in. We want you to call 100 people you know and try to sell them insurance. And then you're going to quit and we're going to keep the policies on these people and make a whole bunch of money. I just wasn't into that. That didn't seem like a good idea. I wanted to do financial planning. So I went to the yellow pages and I went through to find any company that was even remotely close to that, sent out 80, 90, whatever it was, resumes. I mean, you're talking, it's 1991. Mail merge doesn't exist. I did have access to word processing. We were a fairly tech forward family in general. Back then, you had to buy special paper. I don't know if you remember this. Early on, when using laser printers, because I had access to a laser printer, you had to buy laser printer friendly paper, which just seems stupid to us now. Well, why wouldn't it be laser printer friendly? I don't know. There was a process they used to make paper in the 80s and early 90s that they don't do anymore that would make the ink not stick. It wouldn't stick to it. That was a problem. But sent them out and got hired at this small firm and left there two years later. It was the realization of I didn't need them, and left with another gentleman to start Successful Money Strategies at that time. And that was a big process. That's how committed I was. And the difficulty when I look at my industry is people use financial planning as a sales tool. It's a sales tool. It's something that I'm going to generalize here, something that an insurance agent or a stockbroker will use. And I'm not painting all of them with this broad brush, but I'm saying it does happen often, that they will use that to sell a certain specific product. And I've seen it over and over again, less so today than 25 or 30 years ago, but it still does happen. It's not a commitment to actual financial planning. And the difficulty is that anybody can call themselves a financial planner. I have my certified financial planner's designation. That doesn't give me exclusive right to be a financial planner, really. I used to say years ago that the only two jobs that you needed, that you could do without any education was if you had a hammer and a pickup truck, you could be a general contractor. And if you had a calculator and a nice button-down shirt, you can be a financial planner. Turns out I'm wrong. You need a license to be a contractor. You don't really need a whole lot. You can kind of operate behind the scenes to be a financial planner. There's definitely regulations you're supposed to follow, but especially in the small term, nobody's going to catch you. It's kind of like that guy that does handyman stuff on the weekends, is really what it comes down to. And I'll tell you one more quick story about that before we get into kind of the process. It's late 2007, early 2008. I have a friend of mine who co-owns this multifamily property, and he lives on one side and his co-owner, partner owns and lives on the other side. And they decide they can't live with each other anymore. Like they're ready to kill each other, and one of them needs to buy the other one out. And this friend of mine loved this piece of property. He wanted to live there the rest of his life. So he wanted to buy it. The problem was they bought very high in the market, maybe 05, early 06. And then they sunk a whole lot of money into this that they weren't going to get back. They remodeled the kitchen. They did this and that, a whole bunch of stuff that was just, it wasn't money that was going to be brought because they just thought they would live there the rest of their lives. They weren't doing it for a flip or to improve it for rental purposes. So my friend goes to the local mortgage broker in town that he drives by the office every day. He goes, oh, I guess I'll just go in there. And he sits down and he fills out the whole application. He's going through the whole thing. And at the end, he hands it over and the guy looks and he says, you only make about $82,000 a year. He said, yeah, that's what I make. He said, in order to qualify for this loan, you need to make $140,000 a year. Is any income you might have missed? No, I only make 82. He goes, oh, that's not a problem. He literally picks up the application, reaches in. My friend is telling me this after the fact, reaches over behind him and drops it into the shredder, opens the drawer to his desk, pulls out a completely separate application. He says, that was for company ABC. This is company XYZ. XYZ issues mortgages with, if you remember this, no income verification. You don't have to verify your income. but we'd like you to be truthful, and you need to put a number that's at least $140,000. Here you go, fill that application. And my friend, who is a very honest guy, just starts laughing. He goes, yeah, but you kind of know. So, nope. When you were talking to me before, I was representing ABC. Now I'm representing XYZ. I have no idea what's going on. You just need to put at least $140,000. Thankfully, he didn't do it. It ended up, they wound up losing the property, it was awful. It was awful. They, when the crash happened later in 2008, they were way upside down, and the bank wound up taking it over, I believe, which was bad. But he could have gotten even worse trouble had he tried to refinance at that point, because it was a terrible rate and everything else. I tell you that story because as my friend is relaying this story to me, he hands me the business card of this mortgage broker, this semi-unscrupulous mortgage broker. And I look down, it's, Fred Jones, ABC Mortgage, and then his title. Take a guess what his title is. Financial planner. He's the exact opposite of a financial planner. He is an anti-financial planner. He probably screwed up more lives that year than I can imagine. But that's the nature of the beast here. So with all that said, let's talk about the financial planning process. Is typically, we'll have a conversation over the phone with a client. I'm going to bring it from the very beginning. Somebody raises their hand, whether we connect online, they find our website, they're a referral to us, and they realize that there's something that they need help with. Usually it's retirement related, but not always. But that's obviously the big one. And we'll have a phone conversation, almost always with me, sometimes with one of my assistants, but almost always with me, just talking about their problem, what's going on. The next step, I'll call it step one, is we have a meeting. Is we sit down with the couple, usually in our office. I have them bring in, I don't know, it's like a laundry list of documents that I need. Obviously, asset statements, investment accounts, 401k, things like that. Tax returns, obviously, is included there as well. But I will ask for really bizarre things. Their estate planning documents, that's not so bizarre. Their auto insurance coverage page, that's weird. I do ask for it, and we'll talk about why in a second. So there's a laundry list. I tell them to bring as much as they can. And then we start going through and analyzing it together, because I'm going to have questions. If they just send me the data, why did you do this? How did this happen? Where did this come from? Is very important for me to know. But we will sit down and kind of figure out what's going on and get a sense of what they're trying to accomplish. And if we think we can kind of put a plan together to get them there, have an idea of that. So they say, yes, we definitely want to do that. We want to go through the financial planning process and make sure that we're here today, and we're kind of trying to get up here. And we know there's a gap, and we're trying to figure out how we can fill that gap. And we need to know the answers to that, and we need help with that. So we go back, me and my team go back, and we run through data analysis. And this can be as little as a couple of hours to a couple of days sometimes. I'm in the middle of working through a plan for a client. It's a fairly complicated situation that I think we've run the retirement analysis, I think like 7 or 8 times, different ways of looking at things, because there's so many different moving parts to their situation with property, and there's multiple kinds of business income. It's a little bit complicated, but it does happen that we're going through things multiple times, but it's analyzing all of those. And I'm looking at 5 key areas. And this is probably the most important part about financial planning. When people say, what is financial planning? It's 5 areas. And if you go get your certified financial planner's designation, they'll talk about these same 5 areas, because it's the same 5 areas that have been talked about for the last 60, 70 years. Retirement. That's the one that we're always focused on the most, is retirement. And that leads to investments, which is the second thing we think about. Then we start thinking about the other 3 that we don't think as much about. Income taxes. Oh yeah, wait a second. Income taxes. If I can save $1,000 in income taxes, that's $1,000 in my pocket, or $1,000 I don't need to spend or withdraw from my investments to make sure I'm getting by. That's a big deal. Estate planning. Estate planning is important for not only after you pass away, but even before, is making sure that everything is lined up so that your wishes are carried out. I will tell you, this is the the number one area that we spend time on with clients. Everybody knows they need it. Everybody's is at the very least outdated, and almost always, 75% of the time, regardless of the age of the person I'm talking to, they don't have even a will. That's a big deal. So we'll talk about that in a minute. And then the last category, number 5. So we got retirement, investments, income taxes, estate planning, and then what I call asset protection. That's why I'm asking for that auto insurance and the homeowners insurance and the life insurance and long-term care issues. All of those are kind of lumped together. These are the things that we don't think about that could drop a nuclear bomb on your financial situation. Oh, we factored in everything else, and oh, you had a car accident and you're liable, and your liability limits aren't sufficient. And I have seen that where we were concerned about that. I had a gentleman years ago who owned a business doing electrical work. He was a licensed electrician. He worked for a major corporation, retired, went back out to work. I may have told this story before. He had compulsory insurance on his work van, and he had $1 million IRA. That $1 million IRA was available if somebody decided to sue him because he made a mistake in traffic. Those are the type of things we're looking at. We don't do any insurance for clients. We recommend how they should do it, either with their existing agent or if they need additional life insurance and things like that. But we're going to look at the auto. We're going to look at the homeowners. We're going to run a retirement, a life insurance analysis to make sure that you have the right amount of life insurance. Some people need more. Some people, and I was just talking with a new client yesterday, that need less. That they're overinsured, and that may mean some premium savings for that person. And then looking at long-term care issues, which are awful, and that means if something happens, you need some sort of nursing home care or assisted living or in-home care, how is that going to affect your finances? All of that's lumped into that 5th category, asset protection. It's gigantic, and we don't think about it, and it's important. So we do all that analysis, and we formulate recommendations across those 5 areas. And we draft a plan itself. We write our own plans. We don't have software that writes the plans. We have software doing some of the analysis. We have software that we wrote that does some of the analysis as well. And the rest of it we hand write because each individual person's situation is different. Not every financial planner does it that way. That's kind of like the way we do it. Is I want to have it as simple as possible and as custom as possible to that person's situation. So we'll formulate recommendations based on the 5 key areas. We always start with income and taxes because that's kind of, it's the groundwork for everything else. Things like how much are you spending now will impact retirement. It impacts investments. So there's a lot of that is intertwined. So we'll start with income and taxes and talk about it. So for each section, we're going to lay out where you stand right now. Here's where you stand. If everything is fine. So income and taxes, let's assume reasonably you're paying the legal minimum amount of income taxes. And I say reasonable because sometimes it's people that they have a large amount of CDs. They have, let's say, $100,000 worth of CDs, and they're okay with that. But that $100,000 is spinning off $4,000 or $5,000 of extra income a year, and it's costing them some money in taxes. Legally, you could do something to reduce that burden. That burden is a couple $100, maybe $500 or $600 in tax burden. You could legally reduce it, but it would mean doing something like buying an annuity, which may not be the smartest thing for that person. So within reason, I want to keep those taxes as low as possible, not while screwing up other parts of the plan. So if there are things we can recommend to reduce the taxes, we're going to say if we do A, B, and C, we're going to save $100, $5,000, whatever it is in income taxes. If there's nothing that can be done, I'm going to tell you, there's nothing you can be done. You're doing exactly what you're supposed to, which is great news. Some people in my industry are like, you got to find a problem. You've got to find a problem. And I always think, what if everything's okay? What if they're doing everything right? You're going to break something just to break it? I can't get behind that. So for each category, so income and taxes, investments, retirement, estate planning, protection, we're going to go through each of those sections. How are you situated right now? What changes might need to be made? So we put this plan together. It might be 15, 16 pages long with charts and graphs. Depends if I'm putting the charts and graphs with the words or at the next page, depending on how big they need to be. The next phase is to sit down with the client and deliver the plan itself. and this seems pretty simple. It should be. The firm I worked for right out of college, it was not simple for them. Here's how I do it is we set up the plan delivery meeting. It's about 45 minutes long. I make it, that's the maximum. It can be done as quickly as 30 minutes. We might kibitz a little bit after that, but in terms of real hard work, 30 minutes is about the max hard work I want to do in that meeting, because I am going to throw the whole plan at you all at once. And we're going to go on a global level across all 5 sections. By the end of that, your brain is completely full. And if I add something else, something falls out. What I'm trying to do with that meeting is you're going to go home with the actual physical plan. If I can get you to hear and see with me as I'm moving the pen and things like that, and then when you read it later on, the odds of those things sticking in your brain is a lot higher than if I just sent it to you or if I just told you about it. I'm trying to make sure it's very sticky, and that's important. So it's get it to stick and send you home. This firm I worked for 30 years ago, they would book a 2.5-hour meeting for plan delivery. And here I am, I'm 21, 22 years old, right out of college going, but why? Why would you do that? Well, you can't let them leave without making a decision. The firm came from the insurance industry background, and that's the way they thought about things, which I can understand to some extent. So they would literally spend an hour going through the financial plan itself. And their financial plans were cookie cutter. The piece of software delivered everything. They had places to put a couple recommendations, but they were probably 50, 60, 70 pages long. And they would go page by page by page. And these poor clients at the end will just, you get that glazed look, and the cheeks are sagging, and they need a cookie. And they'd turn around and go, okay, now we've got to talk about how are we going to execute these different options. What are we going to decide to do? And we need to start doing that right today. Well, they're already filled to the brim. They can't make decisions, and you're forcing them to make decisions. That's a bad idea. So we spend 30 to 45 minutes, usually 30 minutes of actual real work, getting through everything, and then sending you on your way and coming back a week later, 2 weeks later. Not very long, as I don't want to wait too long. I'm booking that next meeting right then for us to sit down again. I'll have an agenda of what I want to do at the second delivery meeting, of things that I think we should be working on, but I will let the client lead that second meeting because I want to answer their questions. I want to know where they're fuzzy. I want to make sure that they are rock solid 100% in everything we're trying to do, that they're in agreement. They may say, I don't feel like doing X, or Y seems weird. I'm dealing with a situation right now with a client with different properties, and it's sentimental and hard, and we're working through that. Well, if we just did just the cold analysis, that's not good enough for them. We have to have a conversation about that. So with all of that, we're going to be looking at trying to make sure that the client understands. If the client understands everything makes sense, then we're going to start action steps. We're going to go back and look through all the things that the plan said for us to do, and we're going to start prioritizing them. I will tell you that we tend to start the estate planning early, and the reason we do that is A, most people don't have one, and B, it's a lot of meetings. It's probably 3 to 5 meetings total between starting to talk about it and actually having documents signed, delivered by an attorney. 3 to 5 meetings. It's a lot of time. It's important for us to get that right. So we'll start that early. We'll talk about the investments early, because a lot of times it's easy, like 401k changes. It's very easy to make those happen, even changing investments. And we do, and I want to caution you, I don't want to mislead anybody, is we manage money for the vast majority of our clients. I will tell you that, just as an aside. And most clients that we do financial planning for, we wind up investing their money. And I will also tell you that the vast majority of my time outside of clients is spent on, when I'm dealing with client issues, it's spent on investment issues outside of meeting with clients on the phone, email, things like that. Email, phone, in person, Zoom with clients. Less than 10% of the time is spent on investment issues. It's always something else. It's always something related back to financial planning, because we do financial planning for virtually all of our investment management clients. We're always talking about financial planning issues. Things like, I need to buy a new vehicle. What's the best way to do that? Should I take out a loan? Should I take money from my account? Which account should I take it from? Same thing of, I have a child who's going to college next year. What's the best way for me to start thinking about today paying for that, even though we did a plan 5 years ago that we like semi-addressed that, but now the issue is here. I just retired. I'm thinking of buying a place in Florida. What should I be thinking about? All of those type of issues. Or I received this inheritance. Just recently, I had a client who his dad passed away, and he wound up with an investment account in an inherited IRA. And it's a question of what's the best way to take the inherited IRA, because he's still working, his wife's still working, and any distributions they take are fully taxable to them at the highest marginal bracket. Unfortunately, his brother, who's an accountant, said we should do the first distribution right now just to get it out of the way. And that was probably not a good idea, because the brother didn't think about how much was this client of mine making and how this would affect his marginal bracket. And maybe we wait and look at other options that we had. But anyways, all of those type of things are issues coming up later, and those we deal with all the time with existing clients that are investment management clients that we do financial planning for. So we have all these action steps, and then we start executing. And it takes anywhere from a low of 4 meetings of maybe a high of 12 meetings to execute all of that. It might take as long as a year, depending on the person's situation, just to get there. Usually not. The 1 year of execution is extreme, but it does happen. Usually it's a couple of months of just regular meetings, once every 2 to 3 to 4 weeks, getting together. Everything we can do with the client, we do with the client. Anything we can do for the client, we do for the client, because that's really where my real work starts. It's not so much telling people what to do, it's helping them do that. Just for instance, with the estate planning, we talked about the estate planning, and a lot of people don't have one, and they know they should. Well, telling you need an estate plan is kind of common sense, right? You know you need it. You just paid me to tell you something you already knew. You didn't pay me to tell you to do it. You paid me for the expertise of walking through you, of really honing what you're trying to do with your estate planning. After you pass away, what do you want to have happen? And then making sure that the documents that an estate planning attorney drafts for you are proper documents that reflect your wishes in the first place in the best possible way. That's really what you're paying for, not just telling you what to do. Is anybody can tell you should save more money. You should save more money. You should get an estate plan. Don't spend too much. Buy term, invest the difference. Buy low, sell high. All of those are obvious recommendations. It's going through and making sure that they get taken care of, and holding people's hand is the real essence of financial planning. It's not just a report. You can get a financial planning report from Fidelity, probably Schwab as well, but I've seen Fidelity's. Fidelity's software is spectacular. I will tell you their software is spectacular. And they're a competitor, and it's spectacular. It's also garbage in, garbage out. If you put in the wrong data, you may get bad data on the way out. And that's something you got to deal with. And then you have nobody holding your hand to get you there. So we go through all of that. Let's say we get it done in 2 months. Now, what happens then? We get the OODA loop. Anybody heard of the OODA loop? Raise your hand. Of course, you guess you can't raise your hand on a podcast, but it's observe, orient, decide, act. I think the military definitely is heavily involved in it. They may have quote unquote invented it, or somebody related to special forces or something, but it's basically the steps you take of seeing what's going on. So everything's implemented. The first thing we want to do is observe what's going on. Then we want to orient. We want to see, okay, this is where we're trying to get to, and here's where we are. Then you decide we have to do X to make sure we're still on the same path, because everybody's situation, when we look at financial planning, people focus on the plan itself. They hold up the paper and they say, there it is. That's the plan. That's the snapshot in time. It would be kind of like saying that your school picture, second grade, embodies everything that you are. It may embody a lot. You may have the same smirk you have right now. You may be wearing your favorite color, still your favorite color. Doesn't tell you what your favorite food is, what movies you like, what you do for a living, how tall you are. All of those things aren't in that snapshot of second grade. Same thing with the financial plan. It's a great tool, but life is going to change. Life is moving. So making sure that that we're doing this OODA. So we're orienting, we're observing, we're orienting, observing, deciding. So we need to decide what directional change do we need to make? And then the most important is act, is execute that new strategy, is making those changes. And then where do you start again? You go right back and you go back to that's why it's called a loop. It's an OODA loop. It's OODA back to O again. And we're constantly looking at that through that. Yesterday, I was meeting with a client, and it's been 15, 18 months since we did their financial plan. It's right after the first of the year. It's a good time to look at this. And, one spouse got a retirement offer through Verizon last year. We wound up not taking it, but it's tax time. I said, can you do me a favor? Can you I'm going to send you a secure link. Send me your W-2s. Send me your latest pay stubs. Upload those. I want to look at from 2 years ago to last year to now. Have our savings rates changed? Has our income changed dramatically up or down? Because that's going to play back into how's their spending. Is their spending still on track with what we were planning? I'm going to observe, orient, then we have to decide together, and then we have to act from that. I think that's it. That's everything. That's the financial planning process. And it's important to keep going. I'll tell you, the people I worry about the most is I do get clients, and I'm not looking for, I don't need every client to invest with us, but I think the majority do anyways, because they trust us in the first place and they know we're watching things. The people that scare the pants off of me is the ones that come in looking for some answers and off they go. And almost always their stuff is all over the place. And we're trying to kind of corral their finances together, not just the investments, but just the randomness that's going on. And we get to the end of the financial planning contract and off they go. And all I can think of is, now, wait, they're not doing that OODA loop thing. They're not going back through it. They're not checking it. And that's what I worry about. But yeah, so if somebody says, hey, you need to do a financial plan, now you have a sense of what it's supposed to look like. And this is what it's supposed to look like. I don't care what anybody else says. It may be an opinion. It may be fact. I'll have to think about that, but you should understand what's supposed to happen so that when you go in that process, you know what you're looking at, you know what it's like. And if you're not getting that, you know that there's a problem. If you're getting that cookie cutter plan with 168 pages and they're going through it and there's nothing in there, and the heavens help you if you get to that one page that says, all of your financial problems will be solved with this one product that, son of a gun, my company already offers. It will solve everything. It's the Ginsu knife of financial systems. There's no such thing. So that's what I have for you today. I hope that was helpful. If you have questions, make sure to jump down in the show notes. You can reach out to us through LinkedIn or through our website. Always happy to answer questions. If you get comments as well, let us know. Make sure you subscribe. Make sure you rate the podcast. That really helps us to get this out to other people, to get this education to them. And with that, I will let you go and stay safe out there.
Thank you for listening to Your Successful Retirement with your host, Dennis O'Keefe. Please click the follow button to be notified when new episodes become available. You can find information for Dennis, our guests, or resources mentioned in today's episode in the show notes.